Okay, this is Dallas with Reds Hunting, going over some of my two favorite boots that we have here at the fly shop. The Crispi Altitude, had a whole season on these, and then the Briksdals. These are the non-SF. They've got a whole line of Briksdals. These are actually their Briksdal Mountains, and these are newish to me, kind of starting off the spring scouting season, if you will, and I'd figure I would do a quick comparison because I got asked about these two boots in the fly shop just the other day. So, Altitude, kind of the pros, if you will, of these boots, just right off the bat, is going to be just the breathability comparatively between these two. The way that this tongue is built with the synthetic tongue, like that, allows it to breathe very well. I've worn these on really hot chucker hunts. I've worn these hot in rifle hunts, and I feel like my feet does breathe very well in this boot compared to the Briksdal. Now, I also think there's a place and a purpose for both these boots, and they kind of serve two different purposes for me in that regard. So if you're looking for a lightweight, breathable boot, that would be this Altitude. In terms of flexibility, comparatively, you've got a 2.5 flex and a 3. To me, there's a big difference between the two, and you wouldn't even think it. The Laponia's even a 2, and there's a big difference there. Sometimes we get questions on how much does the flex really matter, and on Crispi's board, a half of a flex does make a big difference. So if you tend to like a boot where you're going to pack in light and pack out heavy, that is the goal, you would lean towards this Briksdal Mountain, right? It's a flex rating of 3. It's a stiff boot. It's going to be a heavier boot overall, but if the goal is to carry heavy weight on the pack, that flex rating of 3, or maybe even the SF version of 4 might be your goal. If you're looking for a boot, early season, we're running light with just a spotter, not much weight in the pack. I would check out these Altitudes in terms of just the breathability and the flex rating. I will say where I think these Briksdals are going to excel for me is going to be in the chucker hunting country because of their stiffness rating. I like the fact that you've got a flex rating of 3. I actually like the fact that we have more leather and protection on this boot than you do on the Altitudes, because we are hanging out in that shaly stuff where all those chuckers and critters like to hang out. You're constantly side hilling, kicking around rocks, all that kind of stuff. One thing to make note of on these two boots, which you can kind of see here on film, there is a height difference between the two. This boot, the Briksdal, is going to give you a little bit more protection up the ankle. Some people love that, some people hate it. I personally, when I'm up side hilling, spending a lot of time with weight on my back, I like the little bit of extra ankle protection. I feel like it gives me a little bit more superhuman power when I'm packing weight. So I like having that kind of protection, or that ankle support when I'm moving around and stuff like that. Okay, where are the applications are these gonna fit for you? Kind of covered it for the most part. Altitude, 2.5 rating, very breathable. Think early season for some, if you like to tend to run hot, or maybe you're hunting, or maybe just in general that year, it's warmer. This is gonna extend into probably like an early season, maybe mid-season kind of boot for you, especially depending on the kind of terrain. If you're doing high country mule deer, or even just drier terrain that you tend to spend your time in, this might go your route. You still got the Gore-Tex. It's still gonna be very waterproof for you. And I found myself, I kind of lived in this boot last year, except for late season out here in Washington. And I liked it. I have no complaints in terms of comfort, in terms of the width, the toe box. It's not super narrow, but it's also not gonna be super wide. So if you got one of those foots that you're in the middle a little bit, this is gonna be a good boot for you. It does come in a double E, so you can get a wide version of this boot if you tend to have a wider foot than most. Briksdal, this boot for me is gonna kind of probably replace my Altitude after the temperatures start to cool off just a little bit. Where I might have an exception is if I'm gonna go chucker hunting, even though I know it will be warm wild chucker hunting, I still might find myself grabbing this boot just for the overall protection that it's going to offer. I do like that it's a little bit stiffer of a boot, but I think I'm gonna find myself coming middle of October on, I'm probably grabbing these over the Altitude, mainly for the slightly stiffer boot and then the more protection up my ankle. One thing I will note, and Joe talks about this a lot, is these super feets. I have yet to replace those in my Briksdal. So when you get your boots, these things that Crispi makes, they don't spend their money on this portion of the boot. They expect us hikers, hunters, outdoorsmen to most likely replace this with some of our favorite insoles. So I do recommend getting an insole. I run the Super Feet greens. I know some guys like the blues for the comfort, depending on what you're doing, but highly recommend this. This should be like the first thing you do when you get a boot. Go and get yourself a new pair of insoles. Your feet will thank you in the long run. So that's my 2 cents on these two boots. They're both fantastic boots, both Gore-Tex, different application for the two. And I think for a lot of people, they're gonna have a lineup in your boot lineup for sure, depending on the kind of hunter or outdoorsman, or maybe you're just an avid hiker. I think these would fit in your lineup as well.
Well done.